Being a fan of Son Gohan must be like being a fan of Dragon Ball period encapsulated for one specific character. He used to set the world on fire, impress you, do all this kind of cool stuff, and then it all went horribly wrong and it's never properly recovered from it. Yeah, I'm gonna get shit from some people for saying that. But anyway, Totally Not Mark recently did a video about Gohan, calling him the forgotten character, citing how he used to be the most popular character in the series, which he factually backed up by a popularity poll from the Android arc era. And then Boo arc happened, and then GT, and then Super, and yeah, being a fan of Gohan is really rough. But in spite of some very contentious opinions about the way he's been handled for decades now, Gohan remains immensely popular regardless. But his portrayal in Super, particularly as it was outlined by Totally Not Mark, caused a bit of a stir in the fandom, with some people agreeing with Mark on how Gohan was never really able to get out of his rut, while others stated that Mark did not properly represent the character after Resurrection F, kind of ignoring or downplaying several good developments that he had during the run. I find myself somewhere in the middle. I do acknowledge that Gohan was treated better than a lot of people tend to think he was, but there is still a big presentation problem with a lot of Gohan stuff that does explain to me why a lot of people just kind of ignore it or don't think it's all that. And make no mistake, presentation absolutely is a big factor in why a lot of people, myself included, tend to even forget that Gohan even trains during the interim period between the Tournament of Power and Resurrection F. And it also doesn't help that Gohan himself is a character who kind of creates a different impression of himself than the rest of the cast. See, unlike the other characters in the franchise, Gohan is a reactive kind of guy. He's not someone who is constantly 100% of the time going after his goal, always pursuing it with the same fervor, the same passion, the same intensity. And this makes him already quite a bit different for good and even bad reasons. It makes him unique from everyone else because he's not an entirely a cartoon character. He's kind of like a dude who's just going about his life, and when a crisis point starts, he's gonna do his damnedest to help out, but he's not the kind of guy who's gonna spend every waking moment of every waking day wondering how he's gonna get to his end goal, because Gohan's goal is ultimately just to have a nice life with his family. It's just that he lives in a crazy martial arts world where insane lunatics keep trying to show up to blow up his planet, and sometimes succeed, so he's gotta fight. This makes Gohan already kind of unique from all the rest of the characters, with the exception of Future Trunks, who is also someone who is led more by the necessity of protecting things over advancing himself. However, this also creates a bit of a problem for Gohan, because he's not as driven in a lot of his pursuits, whether it's being a scholar or being Saiyaman or being a martial artist. This tends to make Gohan feel kind of bland in comparison to the other strong personalities around him. He doesn't have the passion of Goku or Vegeta, he doesn't have the stoic coolness of Piccolo, and most of the time, outside of his Saiyaman appearances, he doesn't even have the kind of goofy charm that other characters also have. And this ultimately creates the effect of making Gohan feel kind of bland in comparison to the other characters, even if you're someone who appreciates the differences between him and the others. Now, Gohan being kind of an everyman, so to speak, a regular dude, wouldn't be so much of a problem if there weren't such big expectations built up for him. He was the guy who was supposed to continue on from Goku, and we know this because in one of the big title pages for the Boo arc, we have a little blurb from Master Roshi saying that Goku might be gone, but his son Gohan is here to take over for him, which is oh, that's so funny. That is really, really funny. But no, seriously, Gohan was supposed to take over for Goku, but because Toriyama kind of created this everyman personality for Gohan, you have this weird pull in two different directions, where Toriyama just wants Gohan to be a dude who's gonna show up and help out when a crisis point happens. But because of the expectations that so many people have built up for Gohan, and Toriyama himself also built up for them through this stuff like the Sign arc, Namek, and the Android arc, Gohan has gotten this really weird situation where he kind of wants to be more like Krillin on the spectrum of Dragon Ball characters, just kind of living his own life and doing his own thing, but the fans have had this kind of mentality built up for him where they're constantly expecting him to do the big, bombastic shit you expect out of Goku or Vegeta. And this is kind of like the crux of the entire problem with being a Gohan fan, at least I see it. I'm not super into Gohan, but I do talk enough with his fans like Mozilla Vulpix and Aaron Van Dwyne to at least get an impression of what they think about the guy. And you might be wondering to yourself, okay, Ivan, you've kind of dissected the perception of Gohan, but what does this matter with the Tournament of Power? Well, because of this kind of, I'm gonna call it bland flakes, but I don't mean that overly negatively, term for Gohan, him training for the Tournament of Power and after Resurrection F is a thing that happens, but because Gohan himself kind of creates this impression of, this is more like something I'm doing on the side, I'm doing it to kind of improve myself, but it's not something I'm really pursuing much into, it's not really unreasonable, in my opinion, to view Gohan's kind of training after Resurrection F as a bit half-assed. Unlike Goku and Vegeta, who also spend lots of time training off-screen, you at least have the perception that, even if we don't see it, we know from the way they act, from the way they think and feel, that Goku and Vegeta are always training their asses off no matter what is happening until some kind of story beat makes it impossible for them to train, whether it's for a slice of life story or for an action story. And also, to be fair to Goku and Vegeta, we actually do see them spar pretty consistently. We constantly see them, like training a little bit with Whis or one another, so even though we don't see stuff like Goku mastering Kaioken with Blue, which is absolutely a valid criticism of Goku and Super, the perception that is built up around Goku and even Vegeta, these very driven people who are always putting their all into training, lets you kind of swallow the pill of, oh, well, it all happens off screen a little bit easier for me. Whereas Gohan, he's a very reactive guy. He's doing this kind of on the side. He's doing this so he's not entirely useless, but because Gohan himself isn't really treating this as a super big deal, at least I don't think he is, his training to improve himself after Resurrection F comes off, like I already stated, as a side hobby, a thing he kind of enjoys doing, but it's not really something that he's putting a big ton of effort into. So when we get to the episodes leading up to the true Tournament of Power, we have a big payoff where Gohan ultimately reattains Ultimate. That was a very well-worded sentence from me. And he gets really powerful. In fact, he becomes one of the strongest dudes in the tournament. Probably the top 5 in all of Universe 7, not counting guys like Whis and Beerus. And it's a really good episode. It's a really good payoff for him. It's taking something that fans have been criticizing for Gohan in relation to the Cell games, and particularly the Buu arc, where he does the same mistake over and over and over again. This episode of Super addresses this. It actually has Piccolo say, you have this problem, we're gonna fix it, and then they kind of do fix it. And it's a cool payoff. It's a really cool moment, and it allows us to actually see that the Super Riders can, on occasion, do their fucking jobs right. However, there is still the feeling that this is the payoff to something that hasn't really been built up. We get Gohan's initial insistence for training, and then he kind of does nothing. He shows up for a little bit in the Universe 6 arc, he doesn't do anything in the Future Trunks arc, which is especially bad in the anime because he knows what's happening with Future Trunks, and they have him do nothing. And yes, I know that Toriyama didn't write that Gohan helps, and that's why Gohan can't help, but still, you could have at least had him help out with the Mafuba or something, or fixing the time machine, or anything rather than just hearing that Trunks' life is in danger and then going off to train, I think the implication was. Regardless, it's not a very good showing for him in that arc. And when we get to the tournament, Gohan learns about his previous mistakes, he grows from them, but it still kind of feels like the payoff to something that hasn't really gotten anything besides a decent starting point. And this is kind of a problem with a lot of Super stuff, where you might get a good setup, and then there's no middle act, and then you might, once in a blue moon, get a decent payoff to it. That's kind of how Gohan works. We get to A and C, and they both kind of work, but there's no B in between them to create the connective tissue. And it's also just kind of weird that Piccolo is only now telling this to Gohan. I would think that him trying to teach Gohan to stop being cocky when his power rises would be one of, if not the first things he would try to teach him. And it also doesn't help that Gohan is still going to fucking Piccolo. He still needs Piccolo to hold his hand and to explain stuff for him. He can't, I don't know, do something like Goku where he gets a new master or goes to someone else to teach him something that Piccolo maybe can't. And that also doesn't kind of help feeling that Gohan is just kind of stuck in this weird, awkward position where we can't really know what the hell to do with him. Then in the Tournament of Power itself, we have some cool moments where he gets the heirloom of the family from the guy from Zamasu's universe, and he laments the fact that he had to basically get billions of people killed so that his own universe can live. He has a cool moment against the Universe 3 robots. He has a cool moment where he and Frieza team up, first against Frost, and then against Dispo. So Gohan does have some cool stuff, and it really does help that they actually do some cool new stuff with him. They don't overtly nostalgia pander the way they do with, say, Vegeta, who is absolutely obnoxious in the last throes of the Tournament of Power. We've never really seen Gohan interact with Frieza before. I mean, we have seen them as enemies, but we've never seen them cooperate to beat someone, and considering how vastly different these people are personality-wise, it's easily one of the coolest team-ups in the Tournament of Power, and it's also unique. It's not just him and fucking Piccolo again. But once again, Gohan's cool moments do not have the bombast or even the hype that Goku and Vegeta do. This is a problem of the aforementioned perception, where Gohan has already kind of established himself as not being as kind of charismatic as other characters in the main cast, and so even when he gets something cool to do, it still feels like he's not firing on all cylinders. At least that's the impression I get. So even when Gohan gets a cool moment, I think a lot of people feel that it comes with an asterisk. Like, it is cool, but it's not as cool as, I don't know, Goku getting Ultra Instinct Omen and fighting Kefla. That shit was legit hype. Gohan's cooler moments are for the most part more understated stuff, which is cool and it is appreciated, but I understand that in a show like Dragon Ball, which is very much led by a lot of the bombast, especially in Dragon Ball Super, which runs on jerking off fanboy hype, that Gohan would come off as just kinda whatever or okay in comparison to other characters, even talking in relation to his cool moments. But yeah, this video has already gone on long enough. It's very rambly, very kinda all over the place, I can already tell, but hopefully I've tried to explain why I think that Dragon Ball Super Gohan is ultimately an improvement from his Resurrection F self in multiple different areas, but I understand and even sympathize with a lot of the people who still just kind of find him whatever. There are lots of legitimate criticisms that can be leveled at how Gohan is done, even when he does have a marked improvement during the Tournament of Power.